If you looked at the 2014 roster of the National Honor Society at John Harris High School, you would find the name of a 14-year-old freshman who was completely acing his classes. He looked the part, dressed the part, and spent his summers volunteering at local food banks and working in university physics labs. Yet, deep inside federal immigration and border crossing databases, a completely different story existed. Underneath the teenage wardrobe and the flawless American high school resume was an entirely different identity, one anchored by an international travel trail that didn't match the school's paperwork at all. For nearly 4 years, teachers and classmates sat next to a person who was successfully living a double life, entirely blind to the massive investigation that a single anonymous tip was about to trigger. The investigation into the model student of John Harris High School began not in a classroom, but in the sterile, high-security setting of a law enforcement interview room. In early 2016, detectives with the city of Harrisburg Bureau of Police received an unexpected and highly unusual tip. A tipster contacted authorities alleging that one of the city's most celebrated young residents, a brilliant teenager poised to graduate at the top of his class, was completely fabricating his life. According to the caller, the boy who went by the name Asher Potts was not a 17-year-old American teenager at all. He was allegedly an adult man and an undocumented immigrant who had actively compromised the public records system to infiltrate the local school district. Faced with an accusation that sounded more like a movie script than a standard municipal crime, Harrisburg detectives had to tread carefully. They began by conducting a quiet review of the official documents used to establish the student's legal identity. School enrollment files showed that the boy had entered the Harrisburg School District as a 14-year-old freshman in the fall of 2012. The paperwork anchoring his entire identity consisted of a domestic baptismal certificate and a freshly issued Pennsylvania learner's permit. These records listed his date of birth as September 3, 1997. As investigators dug deeper, they cross-referenced these local files with federal databases, looking for a broader paper trail. What they found was a massive regulatory void. There were no early childhood medical records, no middle school transcripts from other states, and no historical footprint for an Asher Potts anywhere in the country prior to 2012. To crack the mystery wide open, local detectives requested assistance from federal agencies, bringing in investigators from the Social Security Administration Office of Inspector General and the Department of State Diplomatic Security Service. The federal agents utilized specialized biometric and border crossing databases to search for individuals matching the physical description and unique accent of the student. The breakthrough came when investigators analyzed Department of State records regarding foreign student work visas from several years prior. A facial comparison and background check revealed a definitive match. The honors student was actually Artur Samuel Samarin, a Ukrainian national born on September 3, 1992. He was 23 years old, making him 6 years older than the fictional persona he had presented to teachers, classmates, and city officials. With his true identity unmasked behind the scenes, law enforcement mapped out the timeline of Samarin's illegal entry and long-term deception. Forensic digital footprints and international travel records showed that Samarin had arrived legally in the United States in 2012 on a short-term J-1 exchange visa, which is a temporary non-immigrant visa that permits foreign students to work summer jobs in America for up to 3 months. Samarin, who had already completed 2 years of university education in Ukraine, had worked a low-wage job at a local restaurant in Harrisburg. Realizing that American university tuition was entirely out of his financial reach and knowing his visa was set to expire, he decided to stay illegally. The investigation soon shifted toward uncovering how a 20-year-old foreign national with a distinct accent could successfully pass off a fraudulent identity to government institutions. Detectives discovered that Samarin had not acted completely alone. He had befriended a local couple, Stefania McClure Potts and Michael Potts, who lived in his apartment building. Investigators uncovered a complex financial and domestic scheme between the three parties. The couple had actively conspired with Samarin to fabricate the identity of Asher Samuel Potts, deliberately changing his birth year from 1992 to 1997 to make him appear 14 years old. This specific age was chosen so that the couple could pretend to adopt him, allowing them to legally claim him as a dependent to secure cash assistance, tax credits, food stamps, and supplementary nutrition assistance benefits from the state government. As police analyzed the domestic living conditions through interviews and forensic evidence, a dark dynamic came to light. While Samarin used the false identity to build an immaculate academic resume, his life inside the Potts household resembled a form of modern indentured servitude. Investigators learned that the couple forced Samarin to sleep on a small makeshift bed inside a walk-in closet. He was required to perform non-stop household chores and turn over every cent of the outside money he earned from odd jobs to Stefania and Michael, who spent it on themselves. Furthermore, Stephanie, who was enrolled in courses at a local community college, forced Samarin to complete all of her academic coursework. Whenever Samarin complained about the psychological or physical toll of the arrangement, the couple threatened to call immigration authorities to have him immediately deported back to Ukraine. Despite the bleak reality of his home life, Samarin's performance in the public sphere was flawlessly executed. For nearly 4 years, he successfully lived a double life that completely fooled the surrounding community. He maintained a stellar 4.16 grade point average, gained induction into the National Honor Society, and became a prominent student representative to the local school board. Desperate to build a competitive profile that would eventually lead to a career as an aerospace engineer at NASA, he threw himself into civic activities. He volunteered at regional food banks, coached youth swimming, and joined high-level math and science summer programs at Pennsylvania State University, where he worked in research labs studying cosmic rays and radiation detection. He even rose to leadership positions within the Navy Junior Reserve Officers Training Corps and the Naval Sea Cadet programs. His perceived excellence was so profound that in late 2013, the mayor of Harrisburg publicly praised him and officially designated an October date as a citywide day of recognition in his honor. The House of Cards began to collapse in late 2015 when the relationship between Samarin and his co-conspirators completely deteriorated. Tired of the domestic exploitation, Samarin packed his minimal belongings and fled the Potts residence, seeking refuge with the family of a classmate in a nearby town. Angered by the loss of their compliant houseworker and the government benefits tied to his presence, the couple's threats escalated. Ultimately, it was this domestic fracture that prompted the tip to law enforcement, though legal teams later disputed exactly who contacted the FBI first. On February 23, 2016, Harrisburg police officers walked onto the campus of John Harris High School and placed the celebrated senior under arrest. The news sent shockwaves through the school district, leaving teachers and classmates completely stunned. However, the forensic investigation was far from over. As detectives interviewed students and reviewed digital communications from Samarin's phone and social media accounts, they uncovered a deeply disturbing secondary crime. During the fall of 2014, while operating under his teenage alias, the 22-year-old Samarin had entered into a physically intimate relationship with a female student who was only 15 years old at the time. Under Pennsylvania law, the age gap and the true age of the victim meant that Samarin had committed a major felony, regardless of the victim's belief that he was a fellow teenager. The initial state-level criminal complaint filed by the Dauphin County District Attorney's Office hit Samarin with a wave of severe charges. He was formerly locked up in the Dauphin County Prison on charges of identity theft, tampering with public records, theft by deception, unsworn falsification to authorities, statutory sexual assault, and the corruption of minors. Recognizing the severity of the situation and looking for leverage, Samarin cooperated with investigators, providing comprehensive testimony regarding the government benefit fraud orchestrated by Stephanie and Michael Potts. As the state case moved through the local court system, the federal government initiated its own independent prosecution. In the summer of 2016, a federal grand jury for the United States District Court for the Middle District of Pennsylvania indicted Samarin on severe federal charges. The indictment revealed that in July 2014, Samarin had submitted fraudulent documentation to the Social Security Administration to obtain a real Social Security card under his fake name, later applying for a replacement card in 2015. Most critically, the forensic trail showed that on December 7, 2015, Samarin had walked into the main post office in Harrisburg and attempted to use his fabricated background to obtain an official United States passport, a direct violation of federal immigration and identity laws. The legal resolution of Archer Samarin's elaborate deception took place across multiple courtrooms. In August 2016, Samarin appeared in a Yellow County prison uniform before a Dauphin County judge and entered a guilty plea to the state charges, including identity theft and statutory sexual assault. Facing a maximum theoretical exposure of several decades in prison, his cooperation against his adult handlers and his lack of a prior criminal record factored heavily into the final sentence. The local judge handed down a state prison sentence of 11.5 to 23 months. Shortly thereafter, Samarin was brought before a United States District Court judge to face his federal penalties. He pleaded guilty to passport fraud and Social Security fraud. The federal judge ordered him to serve an additional 2 months in federal prison, explicitly mandating that the federal time run consecutively, meaning it would start only after his local county jail sentence was fully completed. With the mastermind of the identity swap safely behind bars, state prosecutors turned their sights toward the couple who had facilitated the high school infiltration. Stephanie McClure Potts and Michael Potts were subsequently arrested and charged for their central roles in the conspiracy. They faced criminal charges for theft by deception and tampering with public records for pocketing thousands of dollars in state welfare and tax money under the guise of supporting a minor child. Ultimately, Stephanie McClure Potts was convicted and sentenced to serve 5 months in prison for her part in organizing the fraud, while her husband, Michael Potts, received a sentence of 2 years of supervised probation. Upon the completion of his combined state and federal prison terms, Artur Samaran's lifelong dream of building an aerospace career in the United States officially ended. Because he had overstayed his original exchange visa, committed multiple corporate and personal identity felonies, and lacked any legal right to remain in the country, he was immediately handed over to federal immigration authorities. Agents with U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement processed his paperwork and permanently deported him from the United States, escorting him onto a flight back to Ukraine. The expansive investigation closed a bizarre chapter in central Pennsylvania history, leaving behind a legacy of rewritten public records and an empty desk where a model student once sat. Thank you so much for hanging out and watching this through to the end. If you want to help me out with the algorithm, just dropping a quick comment, hitting that like button, or sharing the post makes a massive difference for a channel like mine. And if you haven't subscribed yet, definitely hit that button so you don't miss the next case. I also want to be completely transparent with you guys. Because of the country I live in, YouTube doesn't allow me to earn any ad revenue from these videos. Right now, the only way I can actually make a living and keep funding the research for these deep dives is through your direct support. If you got some value out of this story and want to help me keep going, there's a link below to buy me a coffee. Truly, every single bit helps more than you know. Appreciate you all, and I'll see you in the next one.